My name is Celeste Pelkey. I am 71 years old. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, in a house I have owned for 31 years. I have a beagle named Biscuit who sleeps at the foot of my bed. I have a daughter in Asheville who calls every Sunday. And I have a son 40 minutes away who 3 months ago told me to call an Uber from the floor of an emergency room. I want to tell you that story, all of it, not because I need sympathy. I am past that, but because I think there are women watching this right now who are living inside a version of this story and they do not yet know it. And I want them to know it before it gets worse. It was a Tuesday morning in February, just after 9 o'clock. I had driven myself to the Kroger on Kingston Pike to pick up a few things, coffee, dog food, the good salad mix that Biscuit ignores, but I like anyway. It had been cold overnight, but the roads looked clear. The parking lot was what got me. There was a patch of black ice near the cart return. I did not see it. One step, and then my feet were somewhere my body was not. I went down hard on my right side. My right hip took the full impact of the fall, and my left wrist caught the concrete when I tried to stop myself. I heard a crack. I knew immediately that something was very wrong. I lay there on that cold concrete in the Kroger parking lot for what felt like a very long time. A young man, a college student, I think maybe 19, appeared above me and said, "Ma'am, don't move. I'm calling 911. I told him, "Thank you." I told him not to worry. My voice was steady. Women of my generation are trained to be steady when everything is falling apart. The ambulance came. The paramedics were kind. They got me onto a stretcher and into the back of the unit. And as we pulled out of the parking lot, I thought, I need to call Ivan. Now, I want you to understand what I mean when I say Ivan is my son. I mean the person I stayed up nights for when he had earaches at age 4. I mean the person whose baseball games I attended in the rain for 6 consecutive seasons. I mean the person for whom I drove 3 hours to Louisville when his apartment flooded during his first year out of college. I mean the person I have loved longer than I have loved anyone except Anthony. And Anthony has been gone since 2018. Ivan answered on the second ring.
Mom, what's going on? It's Tuesday morning.
I told him what happened. I said the words clearly. I fell on the ice. I am in an ambulance. I think I have broken my hip. I am going to UT Medical Center. There was a pause. In that pause, I heard Pamela's voice, quiet in the background. I could not make out the words, but I know the rhythm of a wife consulting her husband. Then Ivan came back. He said,
Mom, we're both at work. Can you maybe call Janelle next door? Or is there someone who can sit with you? And then after they release you, you could maybe call an Uber home.
I want you to really hear that. My son, 40 minutes away, his mother, in an ambulance with a suspected broken hip. And his solution was, call the neighbor, or call an Uber home after. I said, Ivan, I am not being released today. I may need surgery. I need you. Another pause. Okay, keep us posted. Love you. He hung up. The ambulance pulled into the UT Medical Center emergency bay. The paramedics wheeled me inside. A nurse named Sharon took my information and started my chart and asked me who my emergency contact was. I said my son, Ivan Pelkey, and gave his number. She asked if he had been notified. I said yes. She nodded and wrote it down, and I never heard her mention him again. The x-rays showed 2 injuries, a femoral neck fracture. That is a break in the narrow part of the thigh bone just below the ball of the hip joint, and a distal radius fracture in my left wrist. The orthopedic surgeon on call, Dr. Marcus Arnold, came in and explained that the hip would require surgical repair, a procedure called dynamic hip screw fixation. He scheduled it for the next morning. I called Ivan from my hospital room that first evening. He did not answer. I left a voicemail. I told him I was in room 318, that surgery was scheduled for 8 the next morning, and that I would love to see him if he could manage it. He texted back an hour later. Okay, Mom, hope it goes well. Keep us posted. I put my phone face down on the hospital tray table and looked at the ceiling for a long time. Surgery was the next morning. I was in recovery by noon. My neighbor Janelle Greer, bless that woman, had driven up to the hospital on her own initiative when I had texted her what was happening, and she was in the waiting room when they brought me out. She held my hand. She bought me a cup of orange juice from the cafeteria. She sat with me for 3 hours. Ivan came on day 4. He came alone. Pamela did not come at all, not once in 6 days. He stayed 45 minutes. He asked how I was feeling. I said sore and tired. He looked at his phone twice. He said he had a conference call at 4. He hugged me carefully around my shoulder, and he left. I watched him walk down the hallway, and I thought something I had been trying not to think for a long time. I thought, when did I become an inconvenience to my own child? I was in that hospital for 6 days. I had surgery, physical therapy evaluations, occupational therapy, pain management, wound checks, and more forms to sign than I had seen since I bought the house. Through all of it, my neighbor Janelle came 3 times. My daughter, Ruth, then drove up from Asheville on day 3 and stayed until day 5. And Ivan came once for 45 minutes on day 4. On day 6, I was discharged. The hospital called Janelle to pick me up because I had listed her as a backup contact 2 years prior. She came. She loaded me into her car, drove me home, helped me up the porch steps, put my medications in a row on the kitchen counter with a glass of water next to each one, and made me a bowl of tomato soup. Ivan did not call that evening to ask if I had made it home. 3 days after I got home, I went to the mailbox. And what was inside that mailbox changed everything. I need you to stay right here with me, because what I found in that mailbox and what I did next, this is not just my story. I have a feeling it might be yours too. Drop the word Knoxville in the comments if you are with me. Let me see how many of us there are. Before I tell you what was in that envelope, I want to tell you who I am, because the story only makes sense if you know the person it happened to. I was born in Harlan, Kentucky in 1953, the second of 4 children. My father, Roy McIntyre, worked underground in the coal mines from the time he was 19 until his lungs gave out at 58. My mother, Edna, cleaned houses 3 days a week and raised us on the other 4. We lived in a small house on a gravel road where the mailbox leaned to the left, and my father kept propping it back up every spring without ever replacing it. He was that kind of man. Fix what you have. Don't complain about what you don't. I learned to cook at 10 and to keep a household budget at 12. My mother wrote every purchase in a small brown notebook she kept in her apron pocket. Every can of soup, every pair of socks. She knew exactly what came in and exactly what went out, and she never let those 2 numbers get crossed. That notebook is one of the things I think about most when I think about her. I was the first person in my family to finish 4 years of college, graduated from Eastern Kentucky University in 1975 with a degree in education. My parents drove 3 hours to see me walk across that stage. My father wore his one good suit. My mother cried. I have a photograph of the 3 of us on the steps of the gymnasium. I look at it sometimes when I need to remember where I came from. I married Anthony Pelkey that same year, 3 weeks after graduation. We got married at First Baptist Church in Harlan with 63 people and a sheet cake my mother made the night before from a yellow cake mix and canned frosting. Anthony wore a rented tuxedo that was a little short in the sleeves, and he looked at me like I was the best thing he had ever seen. After 43 years, I can still see that look. We moved to Knoxville in 1978. Anthony had been offered a floor manager position at a manufacturing plant in North Knoxville. It was a good job, steady, honest work. I taught elementary school for 18 years, second grade mostly, then took a job as a reading specialist for the Knox County school system until I retired at 63. I loved that work. I loved the children. I loved the moment when a child who has been struggling suddenly gets it. You can see it in their face, the click of comprehension, and I never stopped being grateful that I got to be in the room when it happened. We bought our house on Northview Drive in 1979 for $78,000 with a 30-year mortgage and a prayer. We paid it off in 2007, a year early, and Anthony and I sat at the kitchen table that evening and had a glass of wine to celebrate. It was a Tuesday night. We did not need a party. We had each other and the deed, and that was enough. We raised 2 children in that house. Ivan, born in 1979, who grew up playing baseball and working summers at a hardware store, and who I was deeply proud of when he built a career in pharmaceutical sales and bought a house of his own in Farragut. And Ruth N., born in 1982, who taught herself guitar at 14 and studied social work, and now lives in Asheville with her husband Carl and their 2 daughters, Maya and June, who call me Grandma Cece and draw pictures of Biscuit that are mostly just a brown circle with ears. Anthony died of a heart attack in November 2018. He was 68. We had been at home, just a regular Thursday evening, watching the news. He stood up during a commercial and said he felt a little off, and then he was on the kitchen floor, and I was on the phone with 911, and he was gone before the ambulance arrived. It was the worst night of my life. I don't need to say more than that. After Anthony died, I was 65 years old and alone for the first time in my adult life. I had the house paid off. I had Anthony's pension, a small monthly amount. I had my Social Security. I had my savings, not a fortune, but enough. And I had 2 children, 40 minutes away and 5 hours away. And I leaned on the one who was closer. That is not a character flaw. That is a mother doing what mothers do. But what I did not know yet was who he had become and what that closeness was going to cost me. I think a lot of women watching this know what it is to be a widow and to reorganize yourself around your children. It feels right. It feels like that's what family is for. And it is when it goes both ways. Keep watching, because this story is about what happens when it doesn't. It started 6 months after Anthony died. Most things like this start small enough that you don't notice them starting. Ivan called on a Saturday afternoon in the spring of 2019. He said Tyler's school, Tyler was 10 at the time, in 5th grade at a private school in Farragut called Cornerstone Academy, was doing a silent auction fundraiser, and could I contribute something? I sent a check for $200. It felt right. Normal grandmother things. Then in March of 2019, Ivan called again. He said the private school tuition for the following semester was due and things were tight because Pamela had cut back her hours at the dental office. Could I help with 3 months, $2,700, just until things evened out? He said they would pay me back when they got right side up. He sounded embarrassed asking. I said, don't be embarrassed. That's what family is for. I transferred the money. I want you to notice something. He said they would pay me back. That phrase, pay me back. I heard it and filed it away and never mentioned it again because I did not want to make him feel small. That was my first mistake. In October 2019, Ivan called about Tyler's braces. The orthodontist wanted $4,400 at the start of treatment. Their dental coverage through Pamela's employer-capped orthodontic benefits at $1,500. The gap was $2,900. Ivan said they really wanted to get Tyler started because his teeth were an issue, and the orthodontist said the earlier the better. Could I help? I sent $2,900. At Christmas 2019, I drove to Farragut with gifts for the children and sat at Pamela's kitchen table for coffee. She mentioned casually that they had booked a trip to Florida for spring break. A condo on the Gulf Coast, she said. The flights alone had run $1,400. She described it with the ease of someone who is not keeping track. Before she finished the sentence, I had my wallet open. I gave her $800. She hugged me and said I was the best mother-in-law alive. I held on to that. I needed it more than I realized. In July 2020, the HVAC system in their house failed. It was the middle of summer, 94 degrees in Farragut for a week straight. Ivan called and said the repair company had assessed it, and the unit was beyond repair. It needed full replacement. 3 estimates. The lowest was $8,800. Their savings were already stretched, he said. Could I help? I sent $5,500. Ivan said they would cover the rest on a payment plan with the HVAC company. He thanked me. He said he did not know what they would do without me. In November 2020, Tyler needed a laptop for school. A specific model the school's technology coordinator had recommended. $1,200. Ivan called. Could I do half? I sent $600. In April 2021, Ivan called about Pamela's mother. She was being placed in assisted living in Chattanooga, and the facility required a deposit plus first month's fees, together nearly $9,000. Pamela's siblings were helping, but there was still a gap of $4,000. Ivan asked carefully. He said Pamela was so stressed, and he hated to even ask. I said, please don't hate to ask. I sent $4,000. I never heard whether the gap was actually covered by Pamela's siblings or whether I was the only one who contributed. I did not ask. In June 2021, Ivan called about storm damage to their roof. A line of severe thunderstorms had come through in May. Their homeowner's insurance was covering a portion, but there was a deductible and some items the adjuster had declined. The roofing contractor's estimate for the uncovered portion was $6,200. Could I help? I sent $6,200. In September 2021, Grace, who was 8 and had been taking dance for 2 years, was moving to a competition dance company. The fees were higher, the costumes more expensive. Ivan sent me an itemized list by text. Costume fees, competition registration, new dance bag. Total, $340. I sent it. That same fall, I paid for a set of tires on Ivan's car when he said his were down to the wire and he couldn't swing it that month. $480. In August 2022, Pamela was required to complete a continuing education course to maintain her dental hygienist license. The course was $1,100. Ivan asked. I sent it. For 4 years, 2019 through 2022, I gave each grandchild a birthday check of $100. Tyler and Grace, 2 children, 4 years, $800. At Christmas, I gave Ivan and Pamela a combined gift check each year. For Christmases, $1,000 total. In November 2022, Ivan called and said there was a family emergency. He did not elaborate on what the emergency was. He said they needed $4,800 and it was urgent, and he was sorry, but he did not have anywhere else to turn. I did not ask what the emergency was. I transferred the money within the hour. I have thought about that a great deal since. I did not ask what the emergency was. A mother who would drive 3 hours in the middle of the night for her child did not ask what required nearly $5,000, and I transferred the money in under 60 minutes. That tells you everything about the dynamic I had allowed to develop. And then the smaller things, groceries I brought and left on their porch during the pandemic without being asked, gas when we drove somewhere together, and I always pulled out my card, meals when we went out, miscellaneous things over 4 years that I estimate added up to about $1,000. Total, $41,200 from 2019 to early 2023. I kept every bank transfer confirmation, every Zelle receipt, every relevant text message. Not because I suspected something. I kept them because my mother kept her brown notebook and her daughter kept records. It is simply what I do. When I laid those records out on my kitchen table while I was recovering from hip surgery, I saw the number for the first time. $41,200. And I realized something else. Pamela had never once picked up the tab for anything. Not a meal. Not a birthday present for me. Not a Christmas gift for Biscuit. Not a single time in 4 years had Pamela reached into her own purse in front of me. And Ivan, who had said at least 3 times that they would pay me back, had never mentioned it again. Not once. Educational moment. I want to share a number with you right now. According to a study by the Public Policy Institute, more than half of adults over the age of 65 who provide financial help to adult children do so regularly and without any formal agreement. And the overwhelming majority of them, over 80%, do not keep records. Please, keep records. Bank confirmations, text messages, emails. Keep them all. Not because you're planning something, because you deserve to know the truth of what you have given. 3 days after Janelle brought me home from the hospital, I hobbled to the mailbox on my crutches. I want you to picture that. A 71-year-old woman in a house shoe on one foot and a surgical slipper on the other, both hands on the crutches, moving very slowly down 3 porch steps and across 12 feet of driveway to get her own mail. Because no one had offered to get it for her. Janelle would have, if I had asked, but I didn't want to ask. I was raised not to ask. I stood at the mailbox and sorted through the stack. A card from Ruth Ann with a pressed flower she had found on a walk in the mountains. A Medicare explanation of benefits from the hospitalization. A property tax reminder. 2 catalogs. And a white business-sized envelope with Ivan and Pamela's return address in the top left corner. Ivan's handwriting. My name. Celeste Pelkey, 4712 Northview Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37918. I tucked it under my arm with the rest of the mail and made my slow way back inside. I sat at the kitchen table. I opened Ruth Ann's card first. The pressed flower was a blue chicory. I set it on the table beside me. Then I opened Ivan's envelope. Inside was a single printed page. At the top, centered and in bold, Pelkey Family Pet and Home Services. Below that, the date. Below that, my name and address. Below that, an itemized table. Dog boarding and care, Biscuit, Beagle, 6 days, February 14th to 20th, $180. Daily home check and mail collection, 6 visits, February 14th to 20th, $90. Coordination and administrative fee, $35. Total amount due, $305. Please remit within 30 days. I read it twice. Slowly. The way I used to read things to my second graders when I wanted them to really understand each word. Then I set it on the table. Now, I need to explain what I had asked Ivan and Pamela to do. When I went to the hospital, I had a conversation with Ivan from the ambulance. I said, Ivan, Biscuit needs to be fed twice a day. He has enough food for about 4 days. And can someone check on him and collect the mail? Ivan said yes, they would handle it. That was the entire conversation. No mention of payment. No mention of a fee schedule. No mention of Pelkey Family Pet and Home Services. A business that, I can assure you, did not exist before this invoice. When Pamela had texted me a photo of Biscuit on day 2, sitting on their couch with a chew toy, I had said, thank you, and meant it. I thought she was being warm. I thought she was thinking of me. She was keeping a ledger. $305 for 6 days of dog care and mail pickup, while I was in a hospital bed recovering from hip surgery, with 2 titanium implants in my body, alone. I have been a quiet person most of my life. Anthony used to say I was the stillest water he had ever met, but that I ran the deepest. I did not shout or throw things or cry that afternoon at the kitchen table. I sat very still, and I felt something happen inside me that I do not have a perfect word for. Not rage exactly. Rage is hot and fast. This was something colder and much more permanent. I got up slowly and went to the spare bedroom. From the filing cabinet, I retrieved the manila folder where I keep my bank statements. I brought it back to the kitchen table. I opened my laptop. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and I went to work. I want to say something to you right now. If you are watching this and you recognize that feeling, that cold, still permanent shift, then you have been carrying something too long. The question is not whether you should do something. The question is what? Stay with me, because I am going to show you exactly what I did. Step by step. I spread the bank statements across the kitchen table. 5 years of them, from January 2019 through the date of my accident. I had paper copies from First Tennessee Bank, the same bank Anthony and I had used since 1981. I wrote down every transfer that had gone to Ivan or Pamela on a yellow legal pad. Date, amount, reason as I remembered it. Then I matched each one to the bank statement, confirmed each amount, added them up. $41,200 over 4 years, not counting the $305 invoice sitting at the corner of the table. I stared at that number. Then I looked around my kitchen. The linoleum floor Anthony and I had installed in 1994 that was starting to lift in one corner. The dishwasher that rattled every cycle. The refrigerator with the ice maker that had stopped working 2 winters ago. Things I had been telling myself I'd get to, that I'd fix eventually, while I was sending thousands of dollars to a house in Farragut with quartz countertops and a farmhouse sink. Then I remembered something. The email. In the spring of 2022, Ivan and I had been coordinating a plan for Thanksgiving. He had emailed me a thread with various messages in it, trying to nail down dates. In the middle of that thread, buried in a reply chain, was a forwarded bank notification from his credit union. It had been an accident. He was threading too many things together and copied in the wrong message. I had noticed it at the time and thought nothing of it, but I had not deleted it. I went to my email and searched for it, found it in about 3 minutes. The notification read, deposit received, $14,500. External transfer from Hartwell Investment Group. The date was March 11th, 2022. 2 weeks before Ivan had called me to say he needed $480 for his car registration because they were short that month. He had received $14,500 from an investment account. Then, 2 weeks later, called me to say he could not cover a car registration. I printed the email. I printed all of my bank statements. I printed every text message exchange by taking screenshots and sending them to my own email from my phone, then printing them from my laptop. I put everything into a new manila folder and labeled it with a piece of tape. Then I called Janelle Greer and asked if she happened to know any attorneys. Janelle's nephew, Roger Hartfield, had retired from a family law practice in Knoxville after 30 years. He was 67 now, mostly consulting, but he still took clients on a selective basis. Janelle made a phone call. Roger agreed to meet with me. His office was on the 2nd floor of a brick building on Kingston Pike, 3 miles from my house. He had white hair, bifocals, a desk covered in organized stacks of paper, and the manner of a man who has spent 3 decades listening to things that cannot be unsaid. He was exactly who I needed. I laid the documents in front of him. He read through them in order, without rushing, making occasional notes on a yellow pad. When he finished, he set his pen down and looked at me. He said, "Mrs. Pelkey, do you understand what you have here?" I said I had some thoughts, but I wanted to hear his assessment. He said this.
In the state of Tennessee, a legal doctrine called unjust enrichment allows a person who has provided a benefit to another, money, property, services, to seek compensation when it would be unfair for the other party to keep that benefit without paying for it. This doctrine does not require a written contract. It does not require that you said the words, "I expect repayment." It requires three things: that you provided something of value, that the other party received and kept it, and that under the circumstances, allowing them to keep it without compensation would be unjust. I must say, your documentation was unusually thorough. The text messages where Ivan had said they would pay me back were significant. Also, pattern of requests, regular, specific, following a period of family vulnerability after your husband's death, was relevant to the question of whether you've been exploited. Then he said, "There's something else I want to flag."
He explained a term I had not encountered before: undue influence. In Tennessee, when a person in a position of trust and an adult child is legally considered in a position of trust with an elderly widowed parent, uses that position to obtain money or property through pressure, manipulation, or emotional coercion, the transfers can be challenged, even without a signed agreement. He said,
"The pattern here is consistent with financial exploitation of an elder. That doesn't mean we file a criminal complaint first. Civil recovery is typically faster and more directly useful to you, but I want you to know that both avenues exist. I recommend starting with a formal demand letter. Give them the opportunity to respond before we file. Courts like to see that."
I agreed. And then I told him about the group chat. Educational moment. Here is what I learned from Roger Hartfield that I am going to share with you right now, free of charge. If you have given significant money to an adult child over a period of years following their requests, and they have said things like, "We'll pay you back," or "This is an investment," or "You're part of the family plan," those words matter legally. They are not just phrases. They are representations. Document everything you can remember. Write it down today and talk to an attorney who handles elder financial cases. Most offer a free first consultation. You deserve to know where you stand. While I was at my kitchen table going through bank statements, and while I was at Roger Hartfield's office going through my documentation, Pamela was not idle. She was building something. On the fourth day after I came home from the hospital, my phone buzzed with a notification. Ivan had added me to a group text. The group included Ivan and Pamela, my daughter Ruth Ann, my sister-in-law Carol Pelkey, Anthony's sister, who lives in Oak Ridge, my cousin Linda from Morristown, and 3 other relatives I am genuinely close to. The opening message was from Pamela. She wrote, "Hi family. As many of you know, our sweet Celeste had a scary fall and just got home from 6 days in the hospital. We're so grateful she's back on her feet. Even if it's slowly, Ivan and I have been doing everything we can to help from our end. And we're so thankful for this wonderful family village. Now that she's home, we want to make sure she's properly set up for recovery and beyond. We're exploring some options, part-time home aid, possibly some modifications to the house. And as you can imagine, it adds up quickly. If anyone would like to chip in, we're in the process of setting up a GoFundMe for mom's care and recovery. We'll share the link as soon as it's live. Ivan and I will personally match whatever the family raises, up to $500. Every little bit helps. So much love to all of you." I read that message 4 times. Then I put my phone down, and I thought very carefully before I did anything. Let me tell you what was in that message. First, Pamela wrote that she and Ivan had been doing everything they could to help. She had not come to the hospital once. Ivan had come once for 45 minutes. She had texted 1 photo of Biscuit and sent a $300 invoice. Second, no one had asked me whether I wanted a home aid or house modifications. No one had consulted me about any of this. My house, my body, my recovery, and decisions were being announced in a family group chat without my knowledge or consent. Third, she was establishing a GoFundMe in my name. Money that would be collected from my family members. Money that she and Ivan would presumably control, since they were the ones setting it up. Fourth, their matching contribution was capped at $500, meaning if the family raised $2,000, Ivan and Pamela would contribute $500 and everyone else would contribute $1,500. If the family raised $5,000, Ivan and Pamela would contribute $500 and everyone else would contribute $4,500. The cap protected them from generosity while positioning them as generous. I took a screenshot of the message immediately. I sent it to my own email. Then I put my phone down and called Roger Hartfield's office and left a message saying I had a development to discuss. Within 12 minutes, Ruthann called. Mama. That was all she said at first. Just Mama. In that one word, I heard 5 hours of worry and 3 hours of driving, and all the ways she had been paying attention to things I had dismissed. She said, "Did you know about this? Did you agree to a GoFundMe?" I said, "No, I did not know. I did not agree. I had not been asked." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mama, I need to tell you something I should have told you 2 years ago. At Tyler's birthday party in 2021, I overheard Pamela talking to her sister in the kitchen," she said. "And I remember the words because they bothered me enough to write them down." She said, "Ivan's mom is very generous, especially since Anthony passed. She doesn't really have anyone to spend it on anymore, so it works out for everyone." I sat with that. She said, "I didn't say anything at the time because I told myself I'd misunderstood. But, Mama, you've been in the hospital for 6 days and she is already setting up a fundraiser, using your name, without asking you." Ruthann said 4 words, then, that I will remember for the rest of my life. She said, "This is not love." She was right. It was not love. It was something that wore love's clothing very convincingly. But underneath it, it was an arrangement. I had been in arrangement for 4 years, and I had not known it. I messaged Roger Hartfield that same afternoon. He flagged the GoFundMe situation immediately. He said in Tennessee, soliciting funds on behalf of an elderly person without their written, informed consent, and using those funds in ways the donor did not specifically authorize can constitute financial exploitation under the Tennessee Adult Protection Act. The statute is Tennessee Code, annotated 71-6-101. This was not just a civil matter. It had the potential to be a criminal one. I did not respond to the group chat. Within 24 hours, the private messages started. Carol Pelkey, "Honey, don't be difficult. Pamela is just trying to help. Cousin Linda, Celeste, they mean well. A younger cousin I barely see. Just let them do it. Aunt Celeste, they're trying to take care of you. Let them do it. Take care of you." These phrases assume that what Ivan and Pamela were doing was care. It was not care. Care is Janelle bringing soup. Care is Ruthann driving 5 hours without being asked. Care is a nurse named Sharon staying late to check my pain levels at midnight. What Pamela and Ivan were doing was positioning. I screenshot every private message. I added them to the folder. Important warning. I want to stop and speak directly to you. If this is happening in your life right now, if a family member is setting up a fundraiser, a care fund, a shared account, or any financial arrangement in your name without your explicit, informed voluntary agreement, that is a warning sign. Before you agree to anything, talk to your own attorney, your own financial advisor, or reach out to any elder care locator around you. They can connect you with local resources. Your money is your money. Your name is your name. Don't let anyone use either one without your permission. 2 weeks after I received the invoice, when I could move around the house without the crutches for short distances, I called Ivan Sunday afternoon. I asked if he and Pamela could come to dinner the following Saturday. I said I needed to talk through some things, and I thought face-to-face was better than the phone. He said, "Sure, Mom." No hesitation. He probably thought I was going to ask about the GoFundMe. He probably thought he and Pamela were about to manage me into cooperating. That is the thing about people who have underestimated you for years. Their assumptions become their liability. I spent that week preparing, not in the way you might think. I was not rehearsing speeches. I was organizing. I arranged the documents in chronological order. I made a second copy of everything for Roger's files. I timed how long it took me to read the list of transactions out loud, speaking at a normal pace, the way I used to read to my second graders. 11 minutes. I practiced until my voice was level throughout. On Saturday, I made pot roast with carrots and potatoes because that was Anthony's recipe, and it meant something to have it on that table. Not sentimentality, grounding. I needed to feel like myself, and pot roast on a Saturday in my own kitchen was as much myself as I have ever been. They arrived at 6. Pamela brought a bottle of white wine. She was wearing a nice blouse. She hugged me carefully around the shoulder, mindful of the injury. Ivan helped me carry the roasting pan to the table, which I accepted. Tyler and Grace were not with them. I noticed that. They had thought ahead enough to leave the children elsewhere. They were expecting a conversation too. They just did not know what kind. We ate. The conversation was what you would expect. How am I feeling? How is the hip? Is the physical therapy helping? Are the grandchildren doing well in school? Ordinary things. I answered each question honestly and did not give anything away. When the plates were clear, I stood up slowly with my hand on the table and brought the dishes to the sink. I came back to the table. I sat down. I placed the yellow legal pad in front of me, face up, so they could see it was full of writing. I placed Roger Hartfield's demand letter beside it, face down. Ivan saw the legal pad first. The change in his expression was subtle, but I saw it. A small tightening, a recalibration. I said, "I want to share some information with both of you. I'd like to get through it without interruption. After I'm done, we can talk." Pamela opened her mouth. Ivan touched her arm. She closed it. I read from the legal pad. Every transfer, every date, every amount, every context. School tuition, March 2019. Braces, October 2019. Florida trip, January 2020. HVAC, July 2020. Tyler's laptop, November 2020. Pamela's mother's assisted living deposit, April 2021. Roof damage gap, June 2021. Dance fees, September 2021. Car registration, March 2022. Continuing education license, August 2022. Birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, the November 2022 family emergency. Miscellaneous amounts. I read the total last, $41,200. It took 11 minutes. The kitchen was very quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Biscuit slept in his bed by the back door. When I finished, I put the legal pad down. I picked up Roger's letter and placed it on the table between us, face up. I said, "That is a formal written demand from my attorney, Roger Hartfield, whose contact information is on the letterhead. It documents the legal basis for a civil claim of unjust enrichment totaling $41,200, plus the $305 invoice you sent me, plus attorney's fees accumulated to date. It also provides notice that the GoFundMe you attempted to establish in my name, without my knowledge or consent, is being reviewed for compliance with the Tennessee Adult Protection Act." The color left Pamela's face. She said, "Celeste, those were gifts. You gave those freely over the years because you wanted to. You can't go back and call them something else." I said, "Every one of those transfers followed a direct request from Ivan. I have the text messages. I have the call logs. I have a voicemail in which Ivan says, and I wrote it down at the time, we'll pay you back as soon as we get right side up. If those were gifts, why was repayment mentioned? Pamela turned to Ivan. Tell her she's misremembering. Ivan looked at the table. I looked at my son. I said, Ivan, I called you from the floor of an emergency room. I told you I thought I had broken my hip, and you told me to call an Uber. Then you sent me a bill for watching my dog while I was in surgery. That is what happened, not a version of it. That is exactly what happened. He said, Mom, Pamela said his name. One word. Sharp. Offense. He closed his mouth. I said, you have 30 days to respond to the demand letter. Roger's office number is at the top of the page. I am hopeful we can resolve this without going to court. But I want to be clear, I am prepared to if necessary. I stood up, slowly, hand on the table. I walked to the front door with my cane and opened it. I held it. Pamela walked out without looking at me. Ivan paused in the doorway. He looked at me for a moment, and I saw something in his face that I recognized. The same look he had at 7 years old when he broke my mother's good vase, and knew he could not fix it. Not defiance, not anger, just the full weight of knowing what he had done. He walked past me. I closed the door. I stood in my hallway for a long time. Then I washed the pot roast pan. Then I sat in Anthony's chair in the living room, and I talked to him the way I do sometimes when I need to say things out loud. I said, Anthony, I think I finally did it. I think I finally stopped being quiet when I should have spoken. Biscuit put his head in my lap. I sat there until the street light came on outside. I want to say this clearly. That dinner was not revenge. I have thought about that word a lot. What I did was not revenge. Revenge is about making someone else feel pain. What I did was about making sure the truth was said in the same room where it had been ignored for years. There is a difference. And when you know the difference, you can act from a clear place, not from anger, from truth. Ivan and Pamela did not respond to the demand letter in 30 days. They did not respond in 35 days. On day 38, Roger Hartfield filed a civil complaint in Knox County Circuit Court. The complaint alleged unjust enrichment and sought recovery of $41,200 plus $305 for the invoice, plus attorney's fees and court costs. It was filed with every document I had gathered: the bank transfer records, the printed text message exchanges, the email with the investment account deposit, the demand letter, and its lack of response. Roger also filed a separate report with the Department of Human Services, Adult Protective Services Division, regarding the attempted GoFundMe. He included a copy of Pamela's group chat message and the screenshots of the follow-up messages pressuring me to cooperate. Let me explain these two processes separately because I think this is valuable information for every woman watching. The civil lawsuit is a case in court where one private party, me, asks a judge to order another private party, Ivan and Pamela, to pay me back money I am owed. It is not criminal. No one goes to jail in a civil case. The standard of proof is lower than a criminal case. I do not have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. I have to show that it is more likely than not that I am owed what I claim. Roger explained the specific legal theory: unjust enrichment. The elements are 3. 1. Did I confer a benefit on Ivan and Pamela? Yes, $41,200 in documented transfers. 2. Did they accept and retain that benefit? Yes, the money was spent and never returned. 3. Would it be unjust, given all the circumstances, to allow them to keep it? Roger argued yes, given the pattern of requests, the explicit statements about repayment, and the failure to provide basic care when I needed it most. He also made an argument about undue influence. Tennessee recognizes that when a person in a position of trust and courts have held that adult children occupy such a position with elderly widowed parents, uses emotional pressure, repeated requests, and appeals to family obligation to obtain money. Those transfers can be challenged. The case of In Re Estate of Elam is a Tennessee Supreme Court case that establishes this doctrine clearly. Roger cited it in the complaint. The Adult Protective Services investigation is a separate process. APS investigates allegations of elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Financial exploitation, which includes soliciting funds in an elderly person's name without their consent, or obtaining money through manipulation or undue influence, falls within their mandate. They do not share information about ongoing investigations with the reporting party. But Roger advised me to file anyway because the investigation itself creates a record, and that record can be relevant in the civil case. 2 weeks after Roger filed the APS report, the GoFundMe disappeared. Ivan and Pamela hired an attorney, a man from a general practice firm in West Knoxville who handled a range of matters. Will's small business fender benders. He was not a specialist in elder financial law. Roger was. That difference mattered. The other attorney requested our documentation in discovery. We provided it. 2 weeks later, he contacted Roger and initiated settlement discussions. Roger told me later what their attorney had said when he reviewed the file. He said the documentation was comprehensive and the case was difficult to defend. That was the word he used. Difficult. The negotiation took 4 months. There were moments I doubted myself. There were moments I wondered if the cost, financial, emotional, familial, was worth it. I want to be honest about that because I do not want this story to sound like it was easy. It was not easy. There were nights I sat in Anthony's chair and wished I had never found that invoice. Wished I could go back to not knowing, but I could not unknow it. And the alternative, accepting the invoice, staying silent, continuing to be an open account from which they withdrew whenever they chose, was not a real alternative anymore. Not after what Ruthen said. This is not love. The settlement was reached in October. Under the confidentiality provision, I cannot share every detail, but I can tell you that it included full repayment of the $41,200. It included the $305 invoice amount, which gave me a quiet satisfaction I will not apologize for. And it included a payment of $4,800 toward my legal fees. Total, $46,305. The money arrived via wire transfer on a Friday morning. I was at the kitchen table. Biscuit was at my feet. I watched the confirmation appear on my phone. I sat there. Then I called Ruthen. She answered before the first ring finished. She had been waiting. I said, "It's done." She said, "Mama." I said, "I'm okay, Ruth. I think I'm actually okay." She cried. I did not. But I held the phone for a long time after we said goodbye, just sitting in the quiet of my own kitchen, my own house, my name on the deed. Write this out if you need to. 1. Keep records of any financial help you give to family members. Bank statements, text messages, emails, all of it. 2. If you believe money was taken from you through pressure, manipulation, or deception, contact an elder law attorney. In most states, they offer a free consultation. 3. Adult Protective Services exists in every state and every county. You can report financial exploitation, and they will connect you with your local APS office. 4. You do not need a signed contract to have a legal claim. Documentation and a pattern of behavior can be enough. 5. You are not too old to take action. I was 71. The court did not care how old I was. It cared about the evidence, and I had it. It is March now, 6 months since the settlement, 7 months since I fell on the ice in that parking lot, 8 months since a bill for $305 made me open my eyes all the way for the first time. My hip has healed well. Dr. Arnold says the hardware is solid and the bone has remodeled around it the way it should. I walk without the cane on most days. I climb my porch steps without holding the railing. I drove myself to the Kroger on Kingston Pike last month. I drove carefully, parked near the door, and walked very slowly and watched every step, and I bought my coffee and my dog food and my salad mix, and I stood in the checkout line and felt something I had not felt in a long time. Not triumph, just ordinary pride. The kind that comes from not letting a hard thing stop you. Biscuit turned 12 in January. I baked him a dog-safe sweet potato cake from a recipe I found online. He ate the entire thing and then slept for 14 hours. He still gets excited at supper time like it is the first meal he has ever received. I am grateful for him every single morning. Janelle Greer brought me tomatoes from her garden in the summer. She does not know everything that happened, but she knows enough. She said to me one afternoon, sitting on my porch, "Celeste, I always thought you were the quietest woman on this street." I said, "I suppose that was true." She said, "But quiet water runs deep, doesn't it?" I wrote that down in my composition notebook. Ruthann and Carl came up in January with Maya and June. We spent 5 days together. The girls slept in the twin beds in the spare room and drew pictures of Biscuit every morning. Maya made one where Biscuit is wearing a crown. It is on my refrigerator next to Grace's drawing of my house. 2 pieces of art made by grandchildren who love me, one from each side of the family, side by side on the same refrigerator. That is the life I have. Ruthann helped me make some changes to the house during that visit. A grab bar in the shower, a night light in the hallway, a phone holder mounted beside the bed, so I can reach it without getting up in the night. Small things. Practical, loving, asked about things. The difference between those modifications and what Pamela had proposed in the group chat is the difference between a daughter who loves you and someone managing your situation for their own purposes. What about Ivan? He called in December, 2 months after the settlement closed. Sunday afternoon, which is when I usually speak with Ruthann, so I hesitated before I answered. But I did answer. He was quiet for what felt like a full minute. Then he said, "Mom, I've been trying to figure out how to say this for months." I said, "Take your time, Ivan." He said, "I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know it doesn't fix the money or the hospital or any of it, but I have been thinking about the day you called me from the ambulance every single day since this happened. I think about what I said. I think about what Dad would have done." He stopped. Then, "Dad would have been at that hospital before they even got you into a room, and I told you to call an Uber." His voice broke on that last word. I did not fill the silence. I let him carry it. He said, "Pamela and I are in counseling. Together and separately. There are things, I don't want to put all of it on her because there are things about me too, things I let happen, things I didn't say when I should have. I'm working on it. I'm not asking you to trust me right now. I'm just asking you to know that I know what I did." I said, "Ivan, I have loved you since before the day you were born. I held you in that hospital, UT Medical Center, ironically enough, the same one where I just had my hip fixed. And I thought I had never seen anything so perfect in my life. That has not changed. It will not change. But you are right. Trust is different from love. And trust is earned back slowly. I don't know yet what that looks like for us. But I am not closing the door." He said, "That's more than I deserve, Mom." I said, "Probably. But I'm your mother." We have talked 3 times since then. Short calls. Careful. Like 2 people walking across a bridge they aren't sure can hold their weight, checking every step before the next one. It is slow, but it is honest. And in my experience, slow and honest is the only kind of progress that lasts. Tyler and Grace came with Ivan on a Saturday in February. They sat in my living room and ate oatmeal cookies, and Tyler told me about a project he was doing for science class about earthquakes, and Grace showed me her drawing of my house. I told them both I loved them. I meant it completely. Pamela was not there. I did not ask about her. That chapter may or may not open again someday, but I am not waiting on it. I have learned my lesson about waiting. Now, let me tell you what I know, having come through this. I know that the hardest thing about recognizing a pattern of exploitation is that you love the person doing it. This is not abuse between strangers. This is something done by people you would walk through fire for, using exactly that love as the mechanism. They know you'll say yes. They've built their lives around counting on it. Recognizing that truth does not require you to stop loving them, but it requires you to stop funding their comfort at the expense of your own security. I know that women of my generation, women who were born in the 40s and 50s and raised by mothers who held things together through silence and sacrifice, we were given a story about what it meant to be a good mother and a good grandmother. The story said, give, don't count, don't complain, family first. That story is beautiful in the right hands, but in the wrong hands, it is a tool. And I was a tool for 4 years before I understood that. I know that you are allowed to keep score. You are allowed to notice when you are always the one giving and never the one receiving. Keeping score does not make you selfish. It makes you sane. And it makes you able to recognize when something has gone wrong, which is the first step to fixing it. I know that 71 years old is not the end of anything. I bought a new laptop this winter to replace the one that had started running slow. I have set up automatic backups. I reorganized my filing cabinet so that my important documents, the deed, the will, the financial records, the insurance information, are labeled clearly and in order. I have added Ruthann as a trusted, authorized user on my primary bank account, with instructions that this authority is only to be used if I am incapacitated. I did this with a banker and a notary and my own attorney present. No assumptions. No arrangements made for me without me. I know that Janelle Greer, my neighbor, is a better friend than most people I have known for decades. I brought her a plant last month, an African violet, and she cried a little. She said no one had brought her a plant in years. I thought, we are two women on the same street who nearly let the busyness of survival keep us from actually seeing each other. We are not making that mistake anymore. We have coffee on her porch on Wednesday mornings. I know that Ruthann and I are going to Vermont in October to see the fall colors. We have booked a bed and breakfast in Stowe. 2 nights, maple syrup on everything, no agenda whatsoever. I told her I wanted to sit somewhere beautiful and do absolutely nothing useful. She said that sounded like the best plan she'd heard in years. I think it might be, and I know this. That $305 invoice, typed up and mailed while I was still learning to stand up from a hospital bed, was the most important piece of mail I have ever received. Not because it made me angry, because it showed me the truth about what Ivan and Pamela had decided I was worth, the truth about how long I had allowed that valuation to stand, and the truth that I had in my kitchen drawer, a composition notebook, and a manila folder, and $41,000 of documentation that said something very different. I did not lose a son. I lost an arrangement, and I found, in the process, that I had never needed the arrangement. I needed the son, and the son, the real one, the scared, regretful one who cried on the phone in December. He is still there. We are both doing the slow work of finding out if there is something real on the other side of this. I am not waiting for anyone to decide I matter. I have known that for a long time. It just took a $305 invoice to make me act like it. If you watched this entire story, and I mean all of it from the beginning, I want you to do something for me. In the comments below, type the number 71. Just the number. So I know you were here. So I know this reached someone. And if this story reminded you of something. A check you wrote. A phone call you made that went unanswered. A moment where you swallowed something instead of saying it. A relationship where you kept giving and never stopped to ask yourself why. Share this video with one woman you love. Not to start a fight, not to point fingers, just so she knows she is not alone. Because that is what this channel is for. Real women, real boundaries, the quiet strength it takes to protect yourself when no one else is going to do it for you.